Hello everyone, I welcome you all to the 10th online lecture of the course Experimental Methods in Thermal Engineering. In our previous lecture, we have completed our discussion on analysis of experimental data, and from today's lecture onwards, we'll start our discussion on a new module which is on measurement of fluid properties. Okay, so in this particular module, we will discuss about the measurement of density, measurement of viscosity, surface tension and contact angle. Okay, then we are also having one important property of thermal conductivity also when we deal with the fluid thermal systems. But in particular, the measurement of thermal conductivity, I'll discuss once our discussion on the measurement of temperature is over. Okay, so this particular property I'll take after discussion on the measurement of temperature. So over here in this particular lecture, I'll particularly talk about the different techniques which are employed for measurement of the density. Okay, so before that, let us first start with the fundamental definition of the density. So density, I think if I ask any of you, you will be immediately replying that density is nothing but mass per unit volume. Okay, but every time one important point we miss, we doesn't specify the state at which we are mentioning or obtaining this density. Okay, so more appropriate definition for the density includes mass per unit volume at given state. So given state, we may have some condition of temperature, we may have some condition of pressure. Probably in your earlier courses, you might have seen while we measure the density of refrigerant or density of water at different conditions of temperature and pressure, we are having the different values of density. Okay, so that's why it's very important that while we are defining the density, we should say mass per unit volume at any given thermodynamic state. We should also represent that particular thermodynamic state. Okay. And in mathematical formulation, if I have to write density, probably simply you people will be writing delta M divided by delta V. So mass per unit volume. Okay. Now what we will be doing over here, we will be putting some limit over here for the volume and say I am writing that my limit of delta V is tending to V dash. Okay, so normally you might be seeing that many times we write limit of volume approaching to 0. And over here, while I am specifying this mathematical formulation of density, instead of writing delta V approaching to 0, I am writing it delta V approaching to V dash. Why so? Okay, so let me just explain with the help of a graph. So let us consider that one side we are having our density and another side say we are having our nothing but volume. Okay, so what will be happening when our volume is below some critical limit of volume which is represented by V dash. In this particular duration, what will be happening, we will be having very oscillating variation of the density. So density will not show any particular trend, and after this volume of V dash, what will be happening there, then we will try to get some fixed value of density which will remain then constant irrespective of the change of the volume. Okay, so what basically happens when we are going below this critical volume, in this particular zone, we are nothing but achieving the molecular length scale, and in particular this molecular scale, what will be happening, let us consider that if we are having a container and inside this container we are having any substance. Okay, so if we are reaching to the volume of the container, say we are taking less than V dash, in that case what will be happening, what we will be having over here, length scale inside this container will be nothing but approaching to our molecular length scale. It means I can specify the individual molecules. Okay, so this is something I am writing over here. So let us consider whatever these circular points, circles I am drawing, these are nothing but the individual molecules of any substance. Okay, so if we are having this type of situation, in this case what will be happening, when we are approximating to delta V tending to 0, sometime we may get a situation that we have actually approached on a molecule. Okay, so when we are approaching on a molecule, in that case, what will be happening? Obviously, we are knowing the mass of this molecule and volume occupied by this molecule. So in that case, what will be happening? We will be getting some definite value of the density, which is represented by these particular points. Okay, and sometimes what may happen, because now we are having the scale at molecular level, so we may approach this delta v whatever tending to 0. We may get a situation that our assumed value of delta v is actually getting into some location where we are not having any molecule. Okay, so molecules, because of their molecular intermolecular distances in this particular zone, say we are not having any molecule. So in this case, what will be happening? We are having certain volume delta V, which is very small, approaching to 0, but we are not having any mass located in this particular volume. Okay, so over here, what will be happening? We will be getting value of density as sometimes infinite or sometimes very, very low. So that's why what happens when our volume is actually less than some critical volume where our molecular length scales are becoming important. In this case, if we apply the macroscopic or continuum formulation of density, we may get some fluctuations over here. Okay, so that's why while we will be writing the definition of mathematical formulation of density, instead of writing delta V tending to 0, we are writing some volume, we are selecting in such a way so that it is nothing but greater in comparison to the volume whatever is required or below which the molecular activity will be starting. Okay, so that is one important point which you should know about the density. Then density in another form also, it is represented with the help of some another quantity which is known as specific gravity. Okay, so specific gravity Sg, that is nothing but defined as the density of our fluid whatever we are having. Okay, and then divided by we take density of reference fluid. So here we take the reference fluid. So generally what is done when we are having liquids, particularly for liquids, what we do, we consider our reference fluid as nothing but water. Okay, so for liquids, water is considered as reference fluid, and when we are having gases, for gases, air is considered as reference fluid. Okay, and once we know the specific gravity of any of the liquid, and we know the specific gravity, and we know that it is either in the liquid state or in the gaseous state, by just multiplying with the density of the reference fluid, we can determine its density. Okay, then two important terms are normally used while we specify the reference state of the liquid. Either we specify the reference state at NTP. NTP nothing but refers to normal temperature and pressure, where the value of pressure is 760 mm of mercury, and temperature is nothing but 0 degree Celsius. Okay, and another condition could be STP. STP is referred to as standard temperature and pressure. So in terms of pressure, we will be having nothing but 101.325 kilopascals as pressure value, and generally we take 15 degrees Celsius as our standard temperature condition. Okay, so normally while we will be defining the density of the reference fluid, we will be considering either NTP or STP as our conditions at which we define the density of the reference fluid. Okay, so now after knowing about density, what is it? So let us now try to see the different ways for measuring the density. Okay, so the device which is used for measuring the density is something which is known as piezometer. So don't get confused with the piezometers, because piezometer also used for measuring the pressure also. Okay, and as different properties are nothing but interrelated to each other, so one device may be employed for measuring one or more properties. Okay, so piezometers is a device which is used for measuring pressure as well, and it is used for measuring density also. Okay, so there will be slightly difference of mechanism when we will be changing the actually physical property which we want to measure. Okay, so piezometers earlier, particularly in the earlier days, is used extensively Okay, why? Because they were nothing but having simple design, and they were having high accuracy, but high accuracy only these will be giving when these are used with care. Okay, then piezometers in general are divided into three different categories. First is device that measures the amount of mass or amount of substance within a fixed volume. So that is something crudely also if we want to measure. So what we do, we take some container of known volume, and then first we try to take its weight, and then later on we introduced our substance into that container, and then we take its weight, and if we take the difference of the weight, that will be nothing but telling us how much mass we have actually filled inside a fixed volume, and by just doing mass per unit volume we can determine the value of density. Then another device we may have which will be determining the change in pressure which is affected by change in volume. Okay, so if we are changing the volume, by the change of volume of a certain liquid, how much change of pressure is happening, that can also be actually later on related to calculation of the density. Okay, then we may have some device that utilize one or more expansions from one volume to another volume. So I'll try to demonstrate this third type of device also. And this particularly, the third type of device is mainly employed for measuring the density of high pressure gases. Okay. So now let us try to see these individual measurement categories, how these are actually employed in our commercial or available research equipment, which are actually used for measuring the density. Okay, one point I would just like to highlight over here. It may appear to us that measurement of density is nothing but a very simple procedure. Only we need to identify amount of the mass for a given volume. Okay, but it's not that much easy, because when we are measuring the density, every time we are not measuring at atmospheric temperature or pressure conditions. Okay, you will be finding that if we have to measure the density of a refrigerant, then what will be happening? Refrigerant in the atmospheric conditions will be nothing but in the vapor form. Okay, so if we have to measure the density of the liquid refrigerant, obviously what we have to do, either we have to decrease their temperature or we need to increase their pressure. So it means we have to measure the density at the high pressure conditions. Another example could be if we have to measure the say density of the liquid metals. Okay, so liquid metals only will be staying in the liquid form at high temperature. So what we have to do now, we have to make our device compatible at the high temperature conditions. Okay, so different researchers have developed different techniques for measuring the density. Now let us try to see few of these techniques which are mostly being employed in for measurement of density. Okay, so first type of piezometers is known as fixed volume piezometer. Okay, and in case of fixed volume piezometer, what we are having, some container. Okay, so over here you can see in this photograph we are having some fixed volume over here, and this particular volume is made up of pyrex material. So then to this volume we are having one small capillary tube attached over here, and this is nothing but a pyrex tube of 4.8 mm internal diameter and 8 mm outside diameter, and over here we are having some stop valve. Okay, so while density is measured using this type of fixed volume piezometer, what is first done? First, this entire volume is actually kept in vacuum. Okay, so what we will be initially doing, we will be connecting this with the help of this valve. We will be connecting this volume to a vacuum pump. Okay, so that vacuum pump, what it will be doing, whatever the gases are there or atmospheric air is there inside this volume, that will be actually taking it out. And once we are having vacuum inside, then we will be measuring its weight. Okay, then after that, what is done basically, then whatever the sample for which we want to measure the density, that liquid sample is actually introduced inside this volume, and this volume is having some fixed volume. Okay, so we will be filling actually the liquid inside here. Okay, after we have filled the liquid, what we will be then doing, once again we will be actually degassing that liquid, whatever we have kept inside this fixed volume. Okay, after degassing, Then we will once again take the weight, and the difference of the weight will be giving us the mass, and volume is already known, so that's why mass per unit volume we will be getting as nothing but our uh, density. Okay, so this type of device has been used in the past for measurement of saturated density of liquid refrigerants, particularly up to the pressure value of 10 megapascal. So you can see over here that we are having nothing but 0.1 megapascals as our atmospheric pressure. So this has been employed to measure the densities in the range of pressures 100 times to that of the atmospheric pressure. Okay, and while this density is measured, it is measured within uncertainty of 0.3%. Okay, and fixed volume devices, these are also capable of density measurements within uncertainty range of plus minus 0.1% or better. Obviously, any device can perform better, but the only point is that while we are doing the experiments, one should be carefully knowing about all its procedure and following all the guidelines. In that case, what will be happening? Accuracy of the device obviously will be better. Okay. Then another type of density measurement device we are having over here, which is known as high temperature pycnometer. And this high temperature pycnometer is particularly used for measuring the density of liquid metal. So over here, whatever the device has been shown, this particular device is employed for measurement of density of molten silicon, and whatever the reported density measurement is done, that is done up to the temperature limits of 1850 Kelvin and with an estimated uncertainty of 0.5% or better. Okay, so if you see the construction of this device, it is nothing but consists of molybdenum disilicate furnace. So this is nothing but we are having a furnace, and whole device is actually placed inside the furnace. And then over here, this particular chamber, this very small chamber, this is nothing but this represents our boron nitride pycnometer cell. Okay, and below that we are having one graphite support rod and alumina support rod to support this pycnometer device, and then above we are having one alumina push rod to push the cap of this pycnometer over here. Okay, and over here we are having one thermometer attached for measuring the temperature. Okay, so what is first done? First, inside this pycnometer cell, one solid silicon sample is actually loaded. After the solid silicon sample is loaded, then this cap of the pycnometer is actually put on this pycnometer, but it is not fully tightened. Okay, so it was just partially closed. After that, what is done? We are now having a solid sample inside, and this pycnometer is now placed inside the furnace. After that, what is done? In this furnace, desired temperature is achieved, which is required for liquefaction of the metal, solid metal, which is kept inside. And once it has actually reached, the temperature has reached, and the metal has melted. After that, what is done? With the help of this alumina push rod, this top cap of the pycnometer is pressed, and inside this there is a small capillary which allows the extra volume to come out of the pycnometer. Okay, and once already what we are having, the volume of this pycnometer cell is already known, so it's a fixed volume type only, but it is used for the high temperature applications. Okay, and once we are having the liquid molten metal inside, then this is actually taken out and its weight is measured, and based on that weight calculation actually we are measuring the density. Okay, so this is nothing but we are having some arrangement where what we are doing while we are in the atmospheric conditions, we are injecting or putting our solid samples, and then we are heating these samples to their liquefaction temperatures inside our oven, okay, or furnace. Okay, and then basically what is being done, metered volume or fixed volume of the molten liquid is actually kept inside the pycnometer cell, and then its weight is measured. Okay. Then another two types of devices which are explained over here. The very first type is called as variable volume, and second type is known as expansion piezometer. Okay, so variable volume piezometers, these are nothing but characterized by sample cells that change in volume during the experiment. Okay, so over here what we are having some mechanical piston like device. What it will be doing, it will be actually changing the volume while we are taking the measurements. Okay, but this type of variable volume piezometers have actually shown less accuracy. So you can see these are less accurate than other methods of the density measurement, and their uncertainty range is of the order of plus minus 1%, because of which this has not been very popular for measuring the density. So we are not even discussing the details over here. Okay. Then another type of device is called as expansion piezometer, and expansion piezometer is particularly employed for measuring the density of high temperature gases. Okay, so over here high temperature or high pressure gases. So what is done over here, here what we are having, the sample is expanded from one volume into a second volume, and uncertainty in the measurement of the density is often better than plus minus 0.015%. Okay, so what basically happens in this type of particular devices, expansion type piezometers, we are having multiple cells. So we will be having one cell. Okay, and for this cell, let us consider VA is the volume. Then we will be having another cell, and the volume of this another cell will be actually very large in comparison to that of volume of the original cell, whatever we are having. So let us consider the volume of this second cell is nothing but VB. So now this is say closed over here, this is also closed over here, and in between these two, let us consider that we are having one wall. Okay, so what is initially done, first what we do, we will be having nothing but our sample over here, whatever we were having, and particularly this sample will be nothing but at very high pressure and high temperatures. Okay, then what we will be doing, we will now open this wall. While we will be opening this wall, this sample will be actually expanding, and it will be occupying this entire volume VB also. Okay, so initially if you see, initially we were having only VA volume, and finally now once we have opened the wall, now both these chambers are actually having interconnection between the two. So that's why our final volume will be nothing but VA plus VB. Okay, so now what we were having, initially we have taken some M mass over here, and after expansion also, because we have not added anything from outside, neither we have taken anything to the surrounding. So our mass of the gas, whatever we have put inside our pycnometer, that will be remaining actually constant. Okay, so because of that, if I define over here the ratios of densities as original density divided by density of the final stage, that will be nothing but equal to VA plus VB divided by VA. Okay, and this particular ratio is also given by R, and it is sometimes known as cell ratio also. Okay, so pycnometer cell ratio. Now this cell ratio will be fixed for a particular device, and what will be happening normally, this cell ratio is designed for a certain application in such a fashion so that after expansion over here we are having nothing but our atmospheric pressure condition. Okay, and temperature also will be actually coming down when we will be having the expansion over here. But ultimately what we have to do now, because our pressure has goes down, so when our pressure has decreased, now we can consider any of the gas at low pressure, we can consider it as nothing but identical to that of our ideal gas. Now if we measure the pressure and temperature of the final state corresponding to that by applying the ideal gas equations, we can actually calculate the final density, and final density with the help of this cell ratio can be actually used to back calculate the initial density whatever we were having at given condition of pressure and temperature. Okay, so this is the method, and particularly what we do when we are having only single stage expansion, then we consider this second stage volume as very large, and there are certain devices which are also constructed based on the multi-stage expansion in order to achieve the large value of R. Why we want to go for large value of R? Because we want to ensure that after the expansion we should have pressure inside the entire chamber nothing but identical to or close to that of the atmospheric pressure, so that we can apply our idealized theories for estimation of the density from our basic understanding of thermodynamics. Okay, so these are particularly popular for measuring the densities of high pressure gases. Then next type of device is known as bellows type density meter. So this bellows type density meter consists of some cell, and that cell is nothing but a bellow. So it is represented over here. You can see this stainless steel bellow we are having over here. So basically some part of this bellow, or in some cases the entire cell itself, is nothing but a flexible. Okay, so it means it can change its shape, it can expand or it can contract. Okay, and as we are having a flexible bellow, so what it can do, while we will be filling the liquid, it can transmit the pressure on outside of this cell. So this cell, if it can contract and expand, it means it can nothing but sense the surrounding pressure, and based on that it can react, because it can change its volume. Its boundary is not fixed actually. Okay, it's nothing but a variable boundary type density cell. Okay, then this type of device is particularly used for measurement of density of hydrocarbons up to 600 megapascals with an estimated uncertainty of 0.1%. Okay, so now let me explain you the basic construction. So nothing but we are having one bellow over here, and this bellow is nothing but having flexible boundary. It means it can change its outer shape. Okay, and then there is some locating screw over here, which is to locate this bellow in some particular location. And then this particular cage where it is located, this cage is made up of brass. Okay, then what we are having over here, we are having one non-magnetic rod. Okay, so this is a non-magnetic rod, and this non-magnetic rod is connected to some inductive tip over here. So we have made one tip of this non-magnetic rod as inductive. So one end is inductive and its other end is actually connected to the body of the bellow. Okay, and over here we are having some detection coil, and this detection coil actually can sense the magnetic field or electric field, and based on that it will be actually giving us some signal. Okay, and over here you can see we are having some micrometer also to find out the change in location of the coil or to change in location of the inductive field. Okay, so what is basically done over here, inside this particular bellow we put our sample. So here some sample is put, and after that what is done, we can now keep this sample at any pressure whatever we want to do. And you can see over here we are having some open port over here. So through this particular port, what is being done, from outside we will be having some another test liquid. Okay, and what will be happening, this test liquid will be actually having some prime mover, which will be actually having which will be producing certain pressure inside this test liquid. Okay, so because of this pressure, what will be happening, whatever the pressure, known pressure of the test fluid we are having, because of that test liquid, this pressure will be acting on the bellow, and there will be contraction or movement of the bellow boundary. Okay, so ultimately what is happening, basically inside this bellow we are compressing our sample, which is subjected to some known value of pressure. Okay, and how much this bellow has compressed, that will be detected with the help of this detection coil and inductive tape. And generally what is done, the cross section of this bellow is kept constant, so that by just having the linear movement of the bellow boundary, we can estimate change of its volume. Okay, so in this case what is done, how much contraction of the sample liquid has taken while it is subjected to some pressure condition, based on that actually your density calculation is done. Okay, So over here we are nothing but we are subjecting our sample to certain pressure, and based on that pressure we are seeing that how much contraction of our sample is taking place, and that contraction is basically related to the then density of the sample. Next type of device we are having a vibrating element density meter. So in case of vibrating element density meters, the fundamental principle is that we will subject our device to some vibrations, and obviously if inside that device we also include the fluid also, or whatever the test liquid for which we want to measure the density, then what will be happening, the behavior of the liquid or the properties of the liquid will be actually changing the natural frequency of uh, our solid device. So let me just give a simple example. If I have a tube, okay, and if I subject this tube to some oscillations or vibrations, say I am subjecting it to some angular oscillations, okay, so normally what will be happening, the frequency of natural frequency of its oscillations will be nothing but equal to k divided by m, where m will be mass of this tube and this k will be nothing but our modulus of elasticity of the tube. Okay, now what we do, if say this tube we fill with certain liquid, okay, so what will be happening, obviously that liquid will be changing the total mass of the tube, and in that case ultimately what it will be doing, it will be nothing but changing the natural frequency. So after a fluid is introduced inside some solid object, you can see the natural frequency will be nothing but equal to under root of k divided by m plus small k into rho. So where this capital K is something which is nothing but elastic modulus of the solid material, capital M is mass of the solid material, rho represents nothing but density of the liquid whatever we have kept inside this tube, and K is some constant, and this constant particularly depends upon the nature of the system whatever we have employed for solid liquid combination. Okay, so generally the principle is that we will be what it will be doing whenever we will be introducing different samples, these different samples will be actually changing the natural frequency, and obviously in order to oscillate our object, what we will be doing, we will be actually supplying some external forcing frequency, okay, and we will be varying that external forcing frequency when resonance is actually occurring. Okay, and when resonance will be occur, that resonance condition will nothing but tell us that our W1, our forcing frequency has become equal to that of the natural frequency of the system. And once we know the natural frequency, if we know these individual values k, m, and this small k, then we can determine the value of density. Okay, so this is the fundamental principle. Well, but this is actually difficult to achieve, and every time if we are changing the liquid conditions, our K value will be changing. So because of that, generally what is done when this type of vibrating element densimeters are employed, these are actually employed in slightly different way in the practical conditions. Okay, so in the practical conditions, what is done basically, density is related with the equation rho equal to A into tau square minus B, where A and B are nothing but two constant quantities, and this tau represents the time period of oscillations under which the system is actually subjected. Okay, so we will be using some external means, where with the help of that external means actually we will be subjecting our system to some vibrations or some oscillations. Okay, and we will try to observe the time period of this oscillation. So depending upon the type of the fluid which is inside our system, that will be actually changing the time period of oscillation. So that change of time period can be related to the density of the liquid. Okay, so what is generally done, this is the equation. Now in this equation you can see we are having nothing but two constant parameters. So that's why what is done, two test fluids are taken or reference fluids are taken, for which we already knowing the densities as rho 1 and rho 2, and corresponding to rho 1 and rho 2, the time periods of their oscillations are determined, which are nothing but tau 1 and tau 2. So now all these properties are known. So if we are knowing these properties, we can determine the constants A and B, and finally after we substitute the value of A and B, we will be getting final equation of density as nothing but equal to rho 1 minus rho 2 divided by tau 1 square minus tau 2 square, where this entire quantity is nothing but known, because for known sample rho 1 and rho 2 we are knowing our time period of vibration tau 1 and tau 2. Then what we are having a parameter tau only over here. So for any random sample, say which is having unknown density rho, what we will be doing, we will be putting inside our system, and then we will be measuring the value of time period of its vibrations, and based on that we can actually relate the final value of density. Okay, so this type of vibrating element density meters are suitable for operations with wide range of fluids, particularly these are having applications ranging from gases to liquids, and we can also measure the densities of some slurries also using these type of uh, density meters. Okay, then what we are having over here, vibrating cylinder density meters. These are ideal for liquefied gas products or refined liquids. Okay, so these are ideal meters for measuring densities of these type of liquids. Then one example is included over here for vibrating element density meter. So you can see over here, this is nothing but this represents a permanent magnet we are having over here, and then we are having this tube over here. You can see this small tube is there, U type tube. So this tube is nothing but which is actually our vibrating tube, which is of 1.6 mm outer diameter and 1.1 mm inner diameter, and this tube is actually filled with the fluid sample. Okay, and then this magnet, and we are having some pickup and drive bars over this U-tube, which are actually used to generate the vibrations inside the tube with the help of these magnets. Okay, so this type of particular device is used for measurement with corrosive solutions at temperatures up to 723 Kelvin and pressures which are ranging even up to very high pressures of 40 megapascals. Okay, and here we are having uncertainty of around 0.5%. Okay, and these are also used for measurement of density of refrigerants from 253 to 373 Kelvin temperatures, and pressures up to 6.2 megapascals, and uncertainty of these measurements was nothing but 0.05%. Okay. Then one more type of vibrating wire density meter is there. So here also principle is same. Now instead of having the earlier arrangement of tube vibrations, we are having over here some wire. So you can see we are having some wire over here, and above this wire we are having some magnets, and these magnets will be nothing but giving some excitation force for creating the vibrations. And then we are having some aluminium buoyant body over here, and this aluminium buoyant body is nothing but dipped inside the liquid for which we want to measure the density. So in its surroundings of this buoyant body, we will be nothing but having our liquid. Okay, and then what we are having over here, there is some top triangular clamp. So this triangular clamp will be actually keeping the magnets in the fixed location. Okay, and this magnet will be giving the excitation frequency for vibration of this wire, and depending upon the vibration of the wire, if we are having liquids over here, so liquids will be actually changing the vibration or oscillation characteristics, and by relating that change of the characteristics, as I have told you in the earlier slide, we can find out the density. Okay, so over here what we are having, effect of fluid is a result of buoyancy force. Why? Because this aluminium buoyant body is actually submerged inside the liquid, so liquid will be giving some buoyancy force which will be changing the our vibration characteristics of the wire. Okay, so buoyancy force is main, and which is acting on the suspended weight. So over here we can see that resonant frequency of the wire can be expressed in terms of density of the fluid. So whatever the fluid we have taken over here, its density, viscosity. Also viscosity is also an important role in changing the characteristics. Then radius of the wire. So whatever wire we have taken over here, radius of this wire, density of the wire. Okay, and then volume and density of the suspended weight. So these all are the parameters which changes the vibration characteristics, and these can be related to find out the density. Okay, while we will be discussing about the measurement of viscosity, once again we will be there will be this vibrating type of devices, viscometers, for measuring the viscosity also. Okay, then another type of density meters we are having buoyancy type, and these particularly employs the Archimedes principle. Okay, so what is basically done in this type of density meters? You over here you can see that we are having some chamber. So inside this chamber we are having our liquid sample. Okay, and inside this liquid sample we are having some sinker, and this particular sinker is actually attached to a thread, and we are having some balance over here in order to check that how much we need to balance in order to make it suspend over here. Okay, and we are also having some thermocouple which will be actually measuring the temperature of the liquid. Okay, so now in this particular type of devices, it is, it's very simple that whatever the buoyancy force is acting, that can be directly related to the density of the liquid. Okay, so the equation over here is nothing but density equal to mass of solid. So this is the mass of the solid when we are not having any liquid over here. So that is nothing but the original mass. And this MS fluid is nothing but the apparent mass of the solid, and this apparent mass will be coming into picture when we are having fluid over here, and then divided by the volume of the sample, because volume of the sample is nothing but the volume by which our fluid has been displaced. Okay, and we are measuring the temperature and pressure, so we can easily find out the density over here. So over here we have to remember one thing, because we are submerging some solid body inside this liquid, so obviously inside over here we will be having some surface tension force which will be acting at the surface, and so because of that some corrections need to be made for force exerted by surface tension. Okay, particularly over here we are having some suspension wire, so there also we will be having some surface tension force, and then if we are subjecting this to the high temperature variations, there may be volumetric expansion or contraction. So depending upon the volumetric thermal expansion coefficient of the sinker material, we also need to add the correction factors. Okay. So this type of buoyancy type density meters, these are accurate if these are employed with proper care. Then another type of density meter. So this is nothing but the principle is buoyancy type only, but the only sophistication we are having now for suspending the sinker weight over here. So this is our sinker weight, and this is our measuring cell where actually liquid sample is poured. So for suspending the sinker over here, what we are having some magnetic coil based controller arrangement instead of having a normal thread like mechanical arrangement. Okay, then after this, another important property we are having viscosity. So in particular viscosity we can define either as dynamic viscosity or kinematic viscosity. So kinematic viscosity is nothing but dynamic viscosity divided by density, and dynamic viscosity is a measure of the tendency of the liquid to dissipate energy when it is disturbed from equilibrium by a velocity field v, which distorts the knowledge. We know that it is nothing but equal to 1 by 2 into del vi by del xj plus del vj by del xi. Okay, and if we are having viscous Newtonian fluid, for viscous Newtonian fluid, this rate of deformation can be related to the stress term sigma ij by using this relation minus p into delta ij, where p is pressure and delta ij is nothing but our Kronecker delta operator. So this is our Kronecker delta operator. Okay, and mu over here nothing but represents the dynamic viscosity, and then we are having the corresponding velocity gradient terms over here. Okay, So this is particularly applicable this expression is particularly applicable for viscous Newtonian fluid. So generally what happens for the viscous Newtonian fluids, dynamic viscosity is nothing but constant, and if we are having the dependence of dynamic viscosities on the velocity gradient terms also, then our fluid is not of Newtonian type. So in this particular course, we will limit our discussion on the measurement of viscosity of Newtonian fluids only. Okay. So for measuring the viscosity of Newtonian fluids, once again we are having three type of different devices. So the very first type of devices are nothing but vibrating or oscillating type viscometers. So these are having some identical characteristics to that of the sum of the density meters also, which we have studied over here. Second type of device we are having capillary tube type devices. So second category is nothing but capillary tube type devices for measuring the viscosity. And third type of viscosity meters are called as falling body type viscometers. Okay, so where we will be taking some say uh, cylindrical body or spherical body, and we will be actually allowing that body to freely fall inside some liquid. Okay, so these are the three basic principles which are employed and which are incorporated in some of the instruments for measuring the viscosity. Okay, so what we will do, I'll stop at this point, and we will see the detailed discussion of viscosity measurement in our next lecture.